Master Gregory was a man of considerable wealth. He was returning to his home state after a long business trip. His car was luxurious, his suit was tailored, and his heart was content with the success of his recent deals. As his car glided along the highway, he felt a sense of satisfaction. The sun began to set, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. Mr. Gregory lowered his window slightly, enjoying the cool evening breeze. It was then that he saw him, a beggar, sitting by the roadside, his frail body shivering in the fading light. The man's clothes were ragged and thin, offering little warmth. He held out a trembling hand, his eyes pleading for any small coin that might alleviate his hunger. Mr. Gregory, accustomed to such sights, felt a pang of pity stir within him. He stopped his car a short distance away and rolled down the window. "I don't have any change right now," he called out, his voice laced with a practiced apology, but the beggar's desperate eyes held his gaze. The beggar spoke, his voice hoarse and weak. "Sir," he rasped, "I don't need money, just a blanket. The nights are cold." Mr. Gregory hesitated. He was due to reach home soon, and the idea of searching for a blanket felt like an inconvenience. Yet the beggar's plea resonated with something deep within him. He looked at the man's frail figure, his skin pale and roughened by the elements. "All right," Mr. Gregory found himself saying. "I'll get you a blanket. I'm heading home now, but I'll be back this way tomorrow evening." The beggar's face lit up, his eyes shining with relief and gratitude. "Thank you, sir," he whispered. "You are very kind." Mr. Gregory nodded, a sense of self-satisfaction warming him. He had done a good deed, he thought. He would be sure to bring a blanket tomorrow. Upon arriving home, Mr. Gregory was greeted with warmth and excitement. His family had missed him dearly, and he found himself quickly swept up in the whirlwind of their love and attention. There were gifts to unwrap, stories to share, and laughter to be had. The evening was a blur of delicious food, lively conversation, and the comfort of his loved ones. As he settled into his own bed, the exhaustion of his journey finally catching up to him, the beggar by the roadside was far from his mind. The next day was filled with the demands of his business. There were meetings to attend, calls to make, and decisions to be made. Hours turned into minutes, and minutes slipped away like grains of sand. As evening approached, Mr. Gregory found himself caught up in a particularly demanding negotiation. He had forgotten all about his promise to the beggar. It wasn't until he was driving home, the familiar scenery flashing by, that the memory returned. His heart sank. He had failed to keep his word. A wave of guilt washed over him as he sped towards the spot where he had seen the beggar. When he arrived, his headlights illuminated a heartbreaking sight. The beggar lay still on the cold ground, his body covered by a thin sheet of frost. He was gone. Mr. Gregory stared at the scene, his breath catching in his throat. The blanket he had promised lay untouched on the ground beside the beggar. The weight of his broken promise pressed down on him. He had allowed distractions to cloud his judgment, and in doing so, he had failed to save a life. From that day forward, Mr. Gregory carried the burden of his actions. He learned a harsh lesson about the importance of keeping his word, no matter how small the promise. He also realized the importance of self-reliance, for no one, no matter how desperate, should have to rely solely on the promises of others.